Okay, item 3, Fire Department Annual Report from Chief Matty.
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners.
Good morning.
I'm Diane
Happy
Matty.
New
I'm
Year.
your fire chief. Happy New Year. And I'm pleased to present our fiscal year 2019 annual report. You have 2 documents in front of you. There is a PowerPoint and also a shiny glossy, which the PowerPoint is just going to be an abbreviated version of the booklet. So this year, we are happy to announce we opened 2 new fire stations. On the top left, you have Fire Station number 8, which services the North Lake Corridor and Ibis. After living in a trailer for 13 years, our firefighters were more than pleased to move into a brick and mortar building with hurricane impact standards and a beautiful roof and some really nice landscaping. And down on the bottom right, you'll see Fire Station number 4, which is on Parker Avenue. That's the Flamingo Pineapple Park area, also services the City Place neighborhood as well. That's a Category 5 building, which will be able to house some of our firefighters there. They've been in a trailer for several years, and prior to that, a building that was kind of antiquated, and we weren't sure it was going to hold up to a big storm anyway, so very proud of those 2 things. This center layout here is what we do by the numbers. Our annual 911 calls for 2019 fiscal year was 26,318. We completed over 92,000 hours of firefighter training. You can see on the top right, our average response time was 6 minutes and 37 seconds. And the breakdown of just what our calls consist of in the middle circle, 75% of what we do is EMS, but we're still running a lot of fire-related calls at 25%. A highlight down at the bottom is that 93% of our firefighters are paramedics, which paramedics started in our city in the early 70s. We were one of the first adopters in the nation of the paramedic program.
Chief, before you move off of
Yes,
that
sir.
slide, and maybe it's later, how do these 2019 numbers compare to previous years with respect to the number of calls, the average response time?
We have a chart further along.
You do?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
The way it's broken out, here, sick person, fall with injuries, fire alarms, car accidents, those are our higher numbers of calls that we run. Things are broken down by fall uninjured or fall unconscious, so we get very detailed into how those numbers are broken down, but these are the bigger categories for them. The next section down where it's talking about mutual aid, 2,027 calls out, meaning we ran out of our city into another district, whether it was Riviera Beach, down into Lake Worth, the western areas that the county covers, over 2,000 times. And conversely, 1,400 roughly where we were provided service by another agency, whether it's a municipality or the county. Interesting, down at the bottom, we had a 31% reduction in opioid-related calls over fiscal year 18. That's due to some reduction in our halfway houses in the city and some really stepped-up programs by the police department. So this is our average response times in the Station 1 area, where we are right now, right in the downtown of the city, where previously we had 2 units, Truck 1 and Rescue 1. In July, as an experiment, we put Engine 1 back into service on overtime. And immediately we saw an improvement in the response times to the downtown. So that truck had been taken out of service in 2009 due to the economic downturn. So it was presented to the city, and in the 2020 budget, we were able to put that truck back in full-time, make the promotions and staff it. So what we're going to see going forward is an improvement in the percentage of time the first due unit is available. So that means somebody's home from Station 1 to take the call when a call in that zone comes out. If all those 3 trucks are out on a call, someone has to come from either Station 4, which is on Parker, or Station 3, which is up on Broadway in the 5,000 block. So it takes more time. When we have that Engine 1 in service, we went from about 10.6% of the time where nobody was home to take that call in this station to down around 2 to 3%. So that's a significant improvement. This is a heat map, which our GIS helped out with, a heat map of the fire calls that we have in the city, fire-related calls. So whether that's a fire, whether that's a car fire, fire alarms, and you can see that it really is dense in the downtown and then some of the other hot spots throughout the city, so to speak. And then this is the same type of chart, but for medical. So you can see again the downtown, the north end up just north of 45th Street, out past Australian Avenue, some significant call numbers occurring in those areas. So what are we doing to prepare for the future? We have conducted almost 500, or trained almost 500 city employees in the Stop the Bleed program. And that is something we could use in an active shooter or a knifing attack or a car driving into a crowd of people, where we have, you know, over 1,500 city employees. If we can get to some good numbers, that's 1,500 more people that enhance what our fire department brings to the table every day. We're distributing the Stop the Bleed kits and automated external defibrillators in City Hall so that those are available should we need it, and hopefully we never do. ASHER training is active shooter hostile event response, and that's it's a document that's put forth by our National Fire Protection Association, and fire chiefs across the nation agree that this is the way we should be responding to these types of hostile events, and the majority of our firefighters have been trained in it. Also, our emergency manager has been working diligently on some mitigation grants along with Ralph Wall, and we've submitted for some of those, such as the seawall and some other projects that are listed here, which I think they went in about a month ago. Right. Another thing we're doing to prepare for the future to deal with sea level rise and some of the emerging trends that are occurring when these hurricanes come is we have a swiftwater response team. So we had over 20 people that went to specialized training in North Carolina to learn how to do these rescues in fast-moving water from this boat. Also, fire station number 9, which is out in the Haverhill and Roebuck area. We never used to have a fire station out there, and in 2015 we put a fire station out there in a strip mall next to a Dunkin' Donuts and a pizza shop, and we became some neighbors for that neighborhood. But as soon as we went into service, you can see the improvement in response times went from 8 minutes and 23 seconds on average down to around 7 minutes. And the call volume in that area is growing. It also includes the baseball field. It includes Morse Geriatric. So as that area develops, you're going to see more calls increasing in that area. We are still working to improve our ISO rating. We did not hit the mark this time. We are a Class 2. Our overall rating did go up 5% from the last scoring that was conducted. But we've identified, we took a really hard look at what we can do internally to improve that for next time. We're going to work very closely with the water department to make sure that, because a part of it, there's 3 parts. There's dispatch, there's the fire department, and then there's the water supply. So we're going to make sure that we work very closely with the water department to make sure that all of our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed. But for us, internally, we need to increase our fire prevention capacity, which means getting a life safety educator, which, again, that was a position we used to have before the economic downturn, and improve or increase the number of our inspectors that we have. As the growth in the downtown, we need more inspectors for the additional buildings that we're getting. Reducing our travel and turnout time. So one of the things we're doing there is we're buying smaller trucks so that we can navigate better. We have better turning radiuses. We can, as we narrow the streets and we want to make sure that our trucks are maneuverable throughout the downtown and the other areas. And our turnout time. That's the time between when the call hits and the time that the wheels are turning down the road. So keeping that in mind, that is a part that we absolutely control, is the time we get up from what we're doing or training to getting that truck in motion. We also have 16 senior officers that, according to ISO, do not meet the minimum standard for their job. So we're going to work with them to get them qualified and improve some documentation of our pre-fire planning. So this slide says...
Chief, excuse
Yes,
me.
sir.
How often can, when can we next reapply for the ISO?
Chief Taylor?
Mayor, we can apply at any point. However, I caution against repeated calls because they just dig deeper and look harder.
Okay.
In that aspect, but we're on a 5-year schedule. So in 2024 that we're scheduled
Okay.
to be inspected again.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Oh, yes.
just a quick question
Mr.
along
Benuzzi, sorry.
those lines. What kind of percentage increase are we looking at in order to obtain Class 1 status? What would we have to, how much better do we have to get to obtain that Class 1
We are,
status? Real close?
we're close. We're
We
close.
get another 5% increase, it could push us there?
I don't, maybe Chief Taylor, if you...
We need a total of 1.23.
Could you come to the microphone, please, and identify yourself, because we're taping this, so.
This is Rick Taylor. He's our training chief. I'll allow him to speak about the ISO.
We need a total of 1.23 points to achieve a Class 1 status.
Okay, so a 90, or a, is it 88?
And a 90,
90.
90 puts us in that status.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, sir, thank you.
This slide just talks about the breakdown of our budget versus personnel. Where other city, or citywide, I know that number is quite a bit different, but the fire department, our general operating fund, we basically run the fire department, the operations of it, on 14%, so around $6 million. And that's the end of the presentation. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them.
Thank you for that presentation. And one thing I've often said to you as well as the firefighters is that you need to do a better job of patting yourself on the back and letting the public know the valuable services you provide. You know, for example, when we have a major event, Sunfest, Boat Show, 4th on Flagler, you all are out there protecting us, and you know, it's just nice to hear how good of a job you're doing. So,
Thank you
if
very
there's
much.
any recommendation is to do a better job of tooting your own horn, because you do a wonderful job, and we're very proud of you as a department.
Thank
under
you.
your
It-
leadership in particular.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
It was important for us to do an annual report. A couple years ago, the police department threw one down at a meeting, and I went, well, I guess we should do that too. We haven't really ever done it, so.
Absolutely.
It's something that I felt was important.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Benuzzi?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a follow-up on some of the numbers that you had pointed out. The mutual aid numbers for response outside of our city. It seems that we are responding outside of the city maybe a little bit more than we're having response from other agencies into our city. To clarify those numbers, is that those mutual aid numbers anytime we run out of the city, with the exception of those areas that were contracted to provide service, such as Mangonia Park?
Excellent question. These numbers do not include Mangonia Park since they were part of our agreement. So when we categorize the calls that we respond to, it typically says WPB/MP. So those are, because those are, we consider, you know, our primary calls. So we have a couple of areas that are kind of mutually traded by Palm Beach County that we cover, such as Gramercy Park, where you know, it's a county area. However, it's very close to one of our stations. The same with Golden Links Village out off of the Okeechobee area. We're right across the street. It would be a disservice to the community to not respond when we can be there faster. Our station's across the street. So
Same thing in the western communities, then on the new Station 8 is responding a decent amount outside because it's the closest fire station.
right. So if we are not home, if our first due unit in Station 8's area is not available, then that would be covered by either Palm Beach Gardens or the county.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam President?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief. Great presentation. And to Mayor, to your comments, I am always happy to see our residents are tooting the horn for the fire department as well. I know a resident in the South End who a few years ago had a health concern, and you all responded to it very quickly. And then unfortunately, a year or two later, then they had a fire in their house, and it was the same responders, and they could not say enough good things about the service that they received. So thank you for that. Just was glad to see the information in your annual report about preparing for the future and emerging trends. I'm curious if you can talk to us a little bit about how you continually monitor that. I don't know if there's a committee or how often you all meet to discuss these things, and is it discussed at conferences, or how are you determining what are these emerging trends in fire safety?
So we have, that's an excellent question, and the simple answer is that by going to training. When we send people out to Indiana for FDIC, or when we send chiefs to chief conferences, or wherever we go, we pay attention to what's going on. There are newsletters and all kinds of emails that flood your inbox daily, but when you can sit around with your peers and hear what they're going through, you can really try to take some of that stuff back. So that's one of the things that I like to encourage people to do. I would try to avoid, any cuts to that, should we get to that point again in the future. Training is essential, and getting out of our own backyard to see what other people are doing and taking a broad look at things is how we stay on the edge of that.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Schoaf.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Chief, for your presentation. I'm really, really proud that we have a great trained first responder force out there working for us. But I think equally what you touched on is training that you're providing for staff members and citizens alike. In 2002, my father was at a local gym in Western PA where I grew up, was playing an adult basketball league, and at 45 dropped dead of a heart attack when an AED was locked behind a door in a nurse's office. And it's something that a citizen can use just as easily as a trained person, but I think it makes people a lot more comfortable when they can be trained on that kind of equipment. So that kind of thing, that service that you provide for our community is really important. And I think the newer, unfortunate emerging trend is the mass casualty sort of situations that we have. And so you have the Stop the Bleed class, and I read in your backup that someone can bleed to death within 5 minutes, which it's really difficult to get a first responder on the scene to a crowd within 5 minutes. So how can we help with that training? I know I've spoken with you personally about taking that training, being on construction sites frequently, professionally. How can we help get that out to our citizens? Can we get classes together that are either citizen funded or subsidized?
That's excellent. We have given, like I said, over 500, almost 500 of our city employees have been trained. This type of training is important not only just for an active shooter, but some of the feedback that we got from some of the guys that took the classes. This would have been great 20 years ago when I'm running a chainsaw out in the park all by myself and so-and-so got hurt or whatever. To teach them how to use that, it's applicable in so many different ways. But one of the things I want to do in this upcoming budget is put a line item in that for community outreach and for, because we have to compensate our employees for that time. So what we're doing, we're funding it right now through overtime when we're doing the city employee classes, but I think it's important that, unfortunately, this is the way that life is right now, and we have to respond to that and be prepared for it. So I'm looking to expand that program going forward.
Yes.
Just to follow up on that, if we had a community group that wanted to take the class, could they help self-fund that to compensate for staff time? Would that be something that we could approach your department on?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Neri.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks again for your presentation. Speaking of budgets, do you think, in terms of Fire Station 6, that at some point, maybe 5, 10 years, as we look forward, I know it's probably one of our older stations now, but a very important service to the community. Just any quick thoughts on Fire Station 6?
Well, I have some thoughts on Fire Station 6.
Okay.
It was built in 1985, and it was built for 3 people.
Right.
And we're currently running 6 people out of there and have, a lot more capabilities than we did during that time. So down the line, we have Fire Station 1 right here,
Right.
which was built in 1980, so it's a little bit more senior and a little bit closer to the need first.
Sure.
But then Station 6 would be next because everywhere else has at least been rebuilt since in the 2000s.
Great. And then the last point, really want to thank you and your team, the annual High Five for Success, and our men and women in uniform were out with fire trucks, and just it made for a great day at both our elementary and middle schools across the city. And believe it or not, August 10th, 2020 is the first day of school, and so never too early to plan for that. But thank you for your leadership on that, and for the entire team for supporting that initiative.
Thank you. I can speak for my firefighters in that is one of the more fun events that we get to do, so thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner Peduzzi.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one quick follow-up on Commissioner Cho's topic on Stop the Bleed. Have we done any joint training with our police department with regard to that program? I know that police officers are often on the front line and the first to arrive on these scenes that involve the use of, or the need for a tourniquet, et cetera, because often the scene's not safe. And there can be tremendous amount of time that goes by making sure the scene's safe before our paramedics are actually able to come in. Have we done any training with our police department?
The
with regard to
police
Stop the
department
Bleed?
does their own for that. They have training on those types of things and how to use those combat tourniquets.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you again, Chief.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate all the work you guys do.